Cory and Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's so good to see you. And it's just always fun to continue to get to know other brokers in the business. And I think we're lucky in Minnesota that we have a brokerage community that is kind of friends more than we are competitors, right? So thanks for joining me. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you guys. You're both like Minnesota boys, right?
Yep, born and raised.
And you're a team. Is that right? Are you the team, the two of you?
We're partners.
Partners. Okay.
Yeah, we're a team.
Partners. All right.
I tell everyone he knows me better than my wife does.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. And tell me what you do. Where are you now, and what are you working on? Or what is your? I know your title, but what do you actually do?
So our team, we head up the retail capital markets arm of JLL Minneapolis. So our business is shopping centers, single tenant buildings, larger shopping centers. We kind of categorize into those kind of three tranches. Selling them. So we're pretty much just in the sales game.
Got it.
As opposed to, leasing and.
Are you representing both buyers and sellers, or more so sellers?
I would say more so sellers.
Okay.
We work with buyers on a kind of selective basis, but mostly sellers.
Got it. And you guys have been partners for a long time, right?
Yeah. So we've been in a partnership for like 10 years now. But we worked alongside each other for a while before that, kind of independently.
Years.
Yeah.
We started in the business weeks apart.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cory, how did you get started in this business, and why commercial real estate? Like, what were you thinking?
It was an accident. My stepdad, Tom Lohman, was a developer. My real dad is an attorney by trade, and I was going to be an attorney. I was pre-law when I went to college. And then I got through about 3 years of school and decided I didn't want to do any more school. So my stepdad told me, just get out with a degree. And I went to St. Thomas, so there's a lot of real estate guys there. And I got an internship at United Properties back when it was still UP on an industrial leasing team. And I never really liked leasing that much, but I liked the business. And so seeing him do development, and I had big dreams to be a developer, and he told me to get into investment sales if I could. And at that time, Marcus & Millichap was just opening an office in the Twin Cities, and I didn't know anything, so I applied and I got a job there and started 2 weeks after I graduated, and here I am almost 20 years later. So it was kind of an accident.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting when it's kind of in the family. It's hard to turn your back on it. I think a little bit kind of gets in your blood a little.
Yeah, I don't know that I would tell my daughter to do it, but it's been a good career. It's just there's a lot of ups and downs.
That's for sure.
We've gone through some pretty fun cycles in those 18 years.
Yes, fun.
Fun. Yes, we have a twisted way of having a good time.
Yeah.
Matt, how did you get into this crazy business?
So I had no family ties. My parents are from Miami, Florida,
Really?
and moved to Minnesota when I was like 6 months old, 2 years old, somewhere there. And I grew up in Cannon Falls, so not really part of the metro. When I was coming out of college, I didn't really know what to do. I was interviewing everywhere. I interviewed to be a factory manager at Pella Windows.
And what was your major, Matt?
So back up, I graduated with a music major from Luther College.
Like what kind of music?
I played in the orchestra. And
what instrument?
Bass.
Nice.
So I joked that I took the normal route into real estate. About kind of 2/3 of the way through college, I kind of had to look in the mirror moment of like, oh man, what am I going to do? Like this, I had an idea. It didn't feel like that was going to pan out. And then just thought, hey, I'll just cram in as many finance courses as I can, and hopefully I'll figure it out later.
What was your original plan?
Yeah, my original plan, I wanted to be an orchestra director at a college.
Nice.
So that was like at a high school and then college. And I had some friends that, were student teaching, came back, and I still think it's an awesome career. I kind of looked at it though. I was like, man, I just don't think that's for me. And so again, I kind of pivoted a little within college. And as I got out of school, like I said, was just interviewing all over the place. I was getting kind of discouraged. And my dad told me, he said, you know what? He's like, I got this high school friend from back in Florida. He lives down in Dallas now. He's like, I don't know what he does, but I think he makes a lot of money. So he's like, you should just give him a call. Just kind of like, informational interview. Just call him up, see what's up. And so I called him up. Turns out he worked for Marcus and Millichap in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, funny.
And
what's his name?
His name was Howard First.
Okay.
He has since passed away actually in the last few years, but great dude. And he told me at the time, he's like, hey, if you're interested in this, he's like, Marcus Millichap's actually opening an office in Minneapolis like right now. And he's like, if you want to throw your resume through, I'll talk to the managers and see if we can get you an interview. And so he did. I mean, I got an interview, and so I got hired, in quotes, hired.
Yeah, right. Here's a desk.
Here's a desk and a phone, and pay us your money so that you can go through our training program, and make sure to bring your own computer.
At the time, we didn't know.
Right.
I remember I went to the first informational meeting. I went home and told my parents, there's no way I can get a job at this place. Well, come to find out, after being there for quite a while and seeing 200 people come and go, you really, as much as I hate to say it, just need to be able to fog a mirror. And so this cool.
Yeah. I should add though, it ended up being a great experience for the two of us. I mean, I don't think we'd be where we are today without having started there, because it's certainly, a music major from Luther College with zero family ties to the real estate industry locally. I wasn't getting a job at Welsh. I wasn't getting a job at UP. I wasn't getting a job at CB. I wouldn't get a call back from any of those at the time. And you know what? Here we are now. We work at JLL, and it's it's going okay.
Yeah, and really that Marcus and Millichap training ground, I mean, they do hire a lot of people because not very many people can figure it out. How'd you guys figure it out?
Trial and error.
Made a lot of mistakes.
So funny story, just the way to get going there. I mean, you really, like we just said earlier, you're set up with a desk and a phone and a computer to, go database and figure out who to talk to. And so when I was initially set up there, should back up. When I started, the first desk I got sat at was right next to Cory.
We were at a table. We were in temp space.
Smaller than this table right here.
Oh my gosh.
Facing the wall.
Yeah.
And,
facing the wall.
Yeah, and there was, at any given time, because people would come and go, I don't know how many people we had in that room, 15? I mean, it was like boiler room. But, it was temp space while they built out our new space at Normandale Lakes. And the one thing that he was saying is their training was really good. Yeah. In terms of I'll be honest, when I started there, I didn't know what a cap rate was. I mean, I'd done some leasing, but not anything in the capital markets world. And they just put you kind of on a 3-month fast track training program. And the whole time you're out databasing buildings. And mind you, this was before CoStar wasn't in Minneapolis yet, so we couldn't look on CoStar. There was no, LoopNet was in its infancy stages. So we had really to go build this ourselves, and they just said, here's some training and a phone, and then they said, you got to go make 300 calls a week, and that's what we did. And how did we do it? We made a lot of mistakes. I mean, there was no mentorship. We had a regional manager that was great, but he was spread thin because he was trying to grow the office, and so I remember calling gas stations and wasted so much time. But
I cold called Cory's stepdad at his house, and Cory's sister answered the phone
and thought it was me because Marcus Millichap came up on the
caller ID on the landline,
and I was sitting next to Matt, and he's like, "No, this is Matt." And I looked over and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" He's like, I don't know. And it turns out he called. My stepdad was part of an ownership group that owned a not so nice office building in Burnsville. And so Matt just got my parents' phone number and called them at home, and my sister answered.
My initial area that, Marcus was all about territories and where you were focused on. And my territory and product type was office buildings in Dakota County.
Oh, nice.
So tough product to work without a leasing arm,
Yeah.
and certainly without a senior, person to kind of shadow under. So it was nobody leading the blind.
I mean, I kind of did the same thing. I worked at Griffin for a little while, and I was charged with selling apartment buildings, and I literally just figured out, I don't even know how, because computers were like almost non-existent. And I just figured out who all these owners were. I think I looked at, books and whatever. And I just tried to meet with as many apartment building owners as I could. And I mean, it was the first couple sales were interesting buildings, shall we say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 22, I looked like I was 16.
Well, because you look like you're 22 now.
Yeah. I don't feel like that. But I would wear glasses to meetings. I would
To try to look.
Well, sure, because you're cold calling these groups and they don't know you from Adam, right? And so you go in there and here they've got these, in some cases this private capital stuff. This is these people's life savings, and these are big investments. And there's this 22-year-old punk that comes through the door like, oh, I could sell this for you, no problem. And try telling them what they should and shouldn't do with their investments. And the glasses helped a little bit, but it was tough going there for a while.
Do you guys remember the first sale?
I do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. My first sale was the Econo Foods in Norwood Young, America.
Really?
So yeah,
Not office and not Dakota.
Yeah.
Right.
I repped a buyer into it, and I was like, oh man, this is interesting. People actually want to buy this. And nobody wants to buy or sell any of these office buildings that I'm talking about down in Dakota County, but this single tenant grocery store backed by a credit tenant, because it was a Nash Finch at the time before they had sold to Spartan or merged with Spartan. But, they knew there were multiple bids on it. So that kind of was the catalyst for me to jump into retail.
Sure.
And because I looked at what, I knew there were multiple bids on the property in addition to the buyer that I was representing. And I said, oh, okay, so people actually want to buy this. Maybe I should try to sell this stuff. And so that was the jumping point where I started looking more at like single tenant retail and other just different facets of retail.
That's interesting. So Cory, what was your first sale?
Rockwood's Barn Grill in Otsego, sale leaseback, and it was big. It was like 20. It's still there, 20-ish, 1,000 square feet. We did a sale leaseback. Everybody laughed at me. There's like, but you got to remember, we started in 06, and things were nuts, and we didn't know that. We just thought that was normal. And even into 2007, when the housing market started to tank, we were still selling deals with cap rates that were, at the time, historically low. And so I got this Rockwood sale leaseback deal, and I was bound and determined I was going to sell it. And I ended up finding a buyer, a local buyer, and we closed the deal. So this isn't funny, but Rockwood's made 3 rent payments and then quit. So he ended up buying or taking the business, and Rockwood's is still there. And I think he still owns it. That was in 2007, and oddly enough, the buyer financed that with Tony Carlson, who was at Grandbridge, now at Colliers. So it was his first transaction on the debt side, my first transaction. He's light years ahead of me in the business and doing great. And then it was a couple clients after the fact were like, I didn't have the heart to tell you, kid, but I didn't think there was a chance in hell you were going to sell that. And even my stepdad told me, he's like, yeah, you told me about it, and I tried to act excited, but I didn't think there was a chance in hell, and somehow I got it done. So I don't know, luck.
Yeah, luck. But I, what little I know about you, there's a drive inside of you that's pretty insatiable.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably the only thing that's got me to where I'm at. I love the competition. So as much as we're all friends here, that's what keeps me going. I don't like losing. And, it was one of those things when I got out of college at St. Thomas, everybody was going to Best Buy and General Mills, and they were all coming to campus and take kids out to dinner and all this, and I just wanted no part of that. And I was like, no, I'm going to go do something stupid. And so I had like a chip on my shoulder. I had to prove all of them wrong. And that's kind of what drove me. So I just worked, and we worked a lot. And then 2008 happened.
Right. Right. So you got a little of the good, then you went through that was a really tough period.
Yeah, it seemed easy, right? I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, it wasn't easy, but when we were doing it, that like we were seeing all the other brokers inside of Marcus, and back then, Marcus really did have a proprietary system. Like we had LoopNet, but inside of Marcus. So outside brokers, I mean, we were doing deals. We were bringing money into the, crossing state lines kind of before the rest of the market did it, LoopNet. And so it was almost not like shooting fish in a barrel, but we saw all these guys in other markets making just a killing. And then I think we all kind of got a taste of it. I know I did. And because I was out earning my friends right away. And then when the recession hit, they're like, you got to quit. Like, you got to just be done. And I'm like, no. Because you get a taste of it. Like, I'm not, there's runway. Well, then we suffered for
a while,
a long time.
So Matt, did you guys decide to leave Marcus at the same time, or what was the impetus for moving on to the next?
So, I think a lot of people at Marcus, there's many people that stay at Marcus for a really long time. I mean, at any company, you have the people that stick at a company for a really long time. For us, just, the decisions, I think, to move from company to company are pretty local. There's no like macro, factors there. We just looked and saw, hey, we think there's a hole over at CBRE. They had called us to, come over. And we moved over there as part of a larger team. And then while there was another hole that opened up. JLL called us and said, hey, we want somebody to run our retail capital markets, and said, would you guys like to do it? And we said, yeah, sounds like a good fit. So, we just thought that it was probably a better fit for us.
Yeah.
And as you grow up and as you keep going in your business and your career, you evolve, right? And we were at Marcus, we were kind of pigeonholed into strictly private capital deals, kind of call it under. I think our biggest one there was maybe 18 million, but that was kind of a outlier, and I think our average deal there was 4-ish million. And you start looking as you get into business a long time, and you start looking at the landscape and who's doing what, and you got to pick up some of the big trades. And Marcus just didn't give us. We just didn't really have the opportunity there. And so when CB called, obviously they're the machine, right? So we went there and did some. We didn't do any real big deals there, but we did some fun deals there. Mm-hmm. And then then COVID happened, and JLL. A big part for us is the leasing team, and we kind of knew JLL was going to have a hole because they went out and got Ted Gonsier and his team, and so they called us, and the way that they approached the business is more of like one big national team. Played well for me and Matt, so it just made sense, and we love it over there so far. Been 2 years now.
So you talk about, fun deals that you did. Matt, can you think of any deal that was super fun to work on? Like, is there any that stand out?
Well, I guess the first fun one, I mean, Cory can kind of touch on this, but the first fun one we did was probably at 50th in France. And that was like the first like big deal, bigger deal that we worked on, and had, solid interest. It was, notable, all that stuff.
They're all fun when you have a buyer sheet 10 bids deep.
Well, there you go.
Pinehurst was fun, though. So that was my stepdad's deal that he had developed. We're anthropology.
Yep.
He made us compete for the listing, and we got the listing. And there was a lot, I'm not going to say names, but there were 3 or 4 people on that bid sheet that we did that deal in 16.
I think so, yeah. So
10 years. I'd been calling them with no response, and then all of a sudden we took out that listing, and they were my best friend. So that was kind of fun, just because it was like, now you like me. But we had, I think, 12 bids on that deal, and we went way over our pricing. We thought we were gonna. I think we told them high end was 17, and we hit 18. We worked with apartment guys on that. They brought an apartment buyer to the deal. He went, you know, he had the terms were unbelievable. So that was fun.
You know, the other fun ones that we work on now, I think, are more. I mean, for me, are kind of on the development side, where we're kind of coaching some of these developers like through the early stages of the continuum, where you know they'll call us up and say, hey, what do you think of this tenant? You know, what kind of terms do they typically do? You know, what's the exit look like? And you know, so we'll kind of coach on the front end from exit strategy.
Sure.
And then, so it's fun because you start with that, and then now we've been through the whole continuum, you know, multiple times on some of these deals where you get to see the whole thing through. You know, you talk about it in the early stages, you see them get it built, and then you help them with the exit, and it sells. And even so now, we're actually seeing it the second go around where like the person that we ended up selling it to, we've listed it for them, you know, kind of on a second generation deal.
Yeah, it's fun when you get that again. You know, we just listed a property, and we sold it to them in 16, I think, and it's fun to kind of, yeah, it's fun to, you know, it's a lot easier the second time, right?
Yeah.
So and to have those relationships continue with you, and you know, having had a relationship with the seller, and then having a great relationship with the buyer, something went right there that you kind of did right by both people, and then to have that buyer come to you and say, hey, now I want to be a seller.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the ultimate like validation of like what you're doing. You know, when a deal comes back around, it means, hey, you did a pretty good job the first time around.
Right.
And I think that's something. This kind of speaks to like the way we've tried to operate now. I think we haven't always operated this way, but you know, really try to not take a transactional approach. You know, take a more consultative, like advisory role in things. Like, you know, sometimes we end a pitch meeting where we'll say, I don't think you should sell. You know, it's not the right time. You should, you know, wait X number of months or years, or you know, depending on what's going on. But there was, you know, the early days, it's just pounded into you like sell. You know, go chase the paycheck, and like let's, you know, if you don't have any inventory, you're not making any money. So get out there. And I think that's different than some other markets, but I think it's worked well for us.
The other one that was really fun was the Melzer block in Northeast Minneapolis. You know that one?
I don't.
It's what, Noodles
to Masu.
all the way to Masu. There's eight or 10 buildings. I don't know. The Melzer family had acquired and pieced this thing together since the 40s, and the patriarch passed away and his son was selling it. So we had that deal under contract going into COVID. Asana Partners bought it, but that one was fun. It was hard because it was
Nail biter.
old, and yeah, and it was a nightmare to underwrite, and you know, you're piecemealing 10 buildings together, and
You sold them as a package.
Yeah, we underwrote it all as one deal. It had to go basically as one deal.
It's three parcels, but like
3
10
parcels,
buildings.
10 buildings, historic components, so it wasn't really a redevelopment. And Martha Anderson, shout out to her, did an awesome job of managing that deal, so it made it easier. But we sold it to Asana. And do you remember during the riots when Mayor Fry lives? Sorry, Mayor Fry. Mayor Fry lives in the building, or did, during the riots when he went outside of his house and all the people were on the street yelling at him and stuff. Well, we hadn't closed yet. So the guys down in North Carolina saw that. They're like, hey, we saw Melzer on the news today. I was like, oh, man. COVID, right? We didn't have
You're still going to close?
Yeah.
Cool.
Like, we had 7 deals drop the first 5 days of COVID, and this one hung on. So we were like, we really need this one. But that one was fun because that one was a little different.
Yeah, it's fun when you can kind of crack the nut
Yeah.
a little bit, like, and it's not just a super easy slam
Yeah.
dunk thing. Well, you've been through a variety of cycles. How would you classify the market today?
I would say that based on transaction velocity and the general sentiment where we're at, I mean, it feels it's not as bad as 2008, but it's feeling more like that than like, I mean, I guess that's the only real downturn we have to compare it to that we've actually been through.
From a I think it depends on who you ask. So from a investment sale, capital market broker perspective, it's downright awful. Velocity was down. I think in commercial real estate, sales were down 60% last year in 23. I think everybody kind of is holding out hope the Fed does something in the second half of this year, and who knows what they'll do. But from a retail owner perspective,
fundamentals
it's
of retail.
outstanding. I mean, it's and that's a big contrast to 08 when the capital markets were on, fell on their face, and so did the fundamentals of the underlying real estate. The difference this time around is we're at the best occupancy rates we've ever seen. So historically low occupancy. We're losing retail space every year. 1% of retail space is being demolished, mainly big malls. Rents are finally going up. You can't build it because it's too expensive and tenants can't pay for it. So the operators and the owners of this real estate, these retail properties, are cash flowing like crazy, and they're having fights over big box vacancies where going into COVID, we thought that stuff was just dead.
Big box was a 4-letter word.
Big box now is like, they lose a Bed Bath, they get 4 bids from, Nordstrom type tenants. And so the operation side is excellent, where I think there's going to start, and there's no distress. So no distress and no velocity. And so being an investment sale broker is tough right now. But I think that's going to change coming into 25, 6, and 27 because everybody refinanced or put new debt on these buildings in 2020, 21, and 22. And we talked to most people about their debt situation, and I can say there's only one group in the Twin Cities that I know of that did 10-year money on everything. So everybody's going to have to start making decisions starting in the back half of 25. And, they finance these things that we saw it when we were selling all that stuff in 21 and 22. The interest rates were, call it 3.5%.
Right.
20% down, and those numbers don't work anymore. So I don't think we're going to see real pain, but I think there's going to be a lot of conversations about
it drives like a decision has to be made.
Something has to happen.
Something has to happen.
And that's all we need in our business, right? There
Yeah.
needs to be some kind of event or something that creates motivation to not just stay the course.
Exactly.
Right.
If everything is going great, well then, just keep going as is. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So just like every other downturn, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel that keeps you getting out of bed every morning and
Keeps you engaged.
going to the office. But everybody I talk to that's not in the business is like, oh man, it must be horrible. It's like, yeah, kind of for sales, it's not great. I mean,
We're clipping off deals.
we're getting stuff. I don't know how many we did last year, 15 or something like that. We're getting deals done. Most of the stuff we sold in 23 was partnership breakup stuff. So properties that have been handed down to siblings, and the 4 siblings or 5 siblings or however many people just want to go their own way. So they just say, you know what, we know we're not topping the market right now. That's fine. We just want the money. We did a handful, quite a few of those last year. Most of them have an underlying circumstance to go to market. Now there's a couple last year that were just like, we just want to sell. But, if you own a retail center and I come to you and say, hey, Lisa, values are down and there's nothing to exchange into, you're probably going to say, well, I'm full, cash flowing like crazy, and I'm probably not going to do anything. And I don't blame you. So, but just like everything else, it'll come back.
Conversely, with 2021 and 2022, you could call anybody up and say, hey, would you take an unbelievable number on your building today? And it's like, well, yeah, sure. And, 8 times out of 10, you could deliver that. You're not doing that in 23. There's no anybody who was solely price motivated before. Like, that's just off the table. You don't have to do anything.
You probably know this, but this needed to happen.
Right.
Right.
It really did.
I mean, it was too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And
I liked Too Crazy, but
I did too, but at the same time, there was a lot of really dumb things getting done. And,
I mean, I think that's true right before any,
Yep.
people just they lose track of the fundamentals, and they they just get a little bit, I don't know. It's human nature, I think. But
and just, buying anything and watching it go up, nobody could make any mistakes. And that's not all bad, but this is a business where, these people on the ownership and operating side are generally, they're pros, right? And we saw a lot of not pros get in and
Interesting.
make a lot of money, and that's great, and I'm happy for all of them, but
Yeah, any problems were solved just by the market.
it didn't matter.
So,
and then we had, on a competition scale, on the competition side, our biggest competitors over the last 3 years weren't, the usual guys like Bob Pounds and, the pros. It was these kind of residential realtors that would just cold call and I got a buyer, I got a buyer, I got a buyer. And
to the point, would you take an unbelievable number on your property today?
and the answer is
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
And so that's frustrating. And, because we've kind of built our business on, you asked about sellers and buyers. I mean, we don't work buy side very hard at all. We just want to control inventory, and we're, so anyways, it needed to happen. And, be careful what you wish for, because now we're
right.
but it'll
And
come back. It always
who
does.
are the buyers today? I mean, there's still. I mean, how do deals pencil?
Cash.
Yeah.
You want to?
So we found that the ones that where you top value, I mean the term we throw out is you find the unicorn buyer, the perfect scenario. We just closed on a center around a month ago, a little more, and the buyer was in a 1031 exchange. It was a deal in Madison, Wisconsin. They had sold a farm in Utah for all cash, and they had a son that went to UW Law and was going to stay and practice law in Madison. So they said, hey, we want to buy a shopping center in Madison. Well, fortunately, we had the only one on the market at the time that was in the price point that fit what they were looking to do. So they bought it, and they paid the best price. We ended up having, I think, 6 or 7 bids on the property. They were the top one, and they paid all cash for it, and it worked. And 4 months earlier, we sold the center, basically the same story, all cash, 1031 buyer, and but those buyers that are out there, that profile is just not as prevalent. If there were, if you got 10 back in 21 and early 22, if you got 10 bids, 6 of them would be from exchange buyers,
And good.
and solid. Today, if you get 5 bids, hopefully one of them is from an exchange buyer, because they're just not as out there today. So, but you get a mix of kind of regional groups buying. There's kind of the local folks, or I guess local to regional folks that are kind of always buying and selling. I think the most interesting new entry to the market is the funds out there that are now chasing the retail space. I think in the in the hunt for yield, retail looks pretty good. Retail didn't.
Which is crazy, right? Because I mean, a few years ago, it wasn't that long ago, where I just remember lenders wouldn't touch retail.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a dirty word.
Yeah.
There's more money, and this is awesome for us because this has never been this way. But there's more money chasing unanchored strips, and I'm not talking grocery anchored, and I'm not talking like the usual shiny object retail deals. Unanchored strip malls than there's ever been ever. There's a group that has to deploy between 3 and 5 billion in the next 3 years into unanchored strips. There's another group that is acting on behalf of the state of North Carolina's pension. I think it's their pension fund. They've got $250 million of cash that they have to lever and deploy into unanchored strips, and just unanchored strips. And then that doesn't include the usual suspects that are, from outside of this market that are buying these things. So all of a sudden, unanchored strip malls, we went to ICSC in December in New York, and usually everyone wants to talk about grocery anchored and power and all that other stuff. Even the big institutions want to talk about unanchored strip malls. And
That's
we're seeing groups like Phillips
really
Edison try and
interesting.
buy unanchored strips. So, and they are actually, because they have to deploy so much money, and because to deploy $3 billion with, average price tag of $5 million, you've got to do an incredible amount of transactions. So they'll buy them cash, and really, when you're buying deals at a sub 7 cap, today's debt, it doesn't work. But if they can pay cash, and that's what they're doing. So right now, that is probably the most active groups,
Interesting.
except for there's not that much for them to buy.
Yeah, right.
So
And it hasn't quite caught up yet on the pricing side, where like you're just starting to see it now, where like you can pry a few loose, but generally speaking, to the point we made earlier, why if a lot of sellers are looking at their rent roll saying like, why would I do anything? Fundamentally, I'm looking great.
Yeah.
My debt's set for a while. My rent roll looks great. I don't really need to do anything.
and I
Right.
can't exchange.
And yeah, what am I going to do with
What
the
am I
money
gonna
if
do
I
with it?
sell?
Right. That's
So it's
exactly
either
right.
pay the tax
My
and-
clients are saying that to me all the time.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to argue that one because it's we're telling you it's worth a lot because there's nothing on the market, and now we got an offer and you can't do an exchange. But again, I think that changes when they're staring down refinances at 6.5% or today's world 7.25%. I think that's when that stuff starts to shake loose. But it's incredible how much money has been raised for unanchored strip malls. It's
Wow.
nuts.
Is anyone buying with and putting debt on the properties? I mean, are you still doing some deals that involve financing?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Last year we did some of the bigger stuff, and they're trading at a bit higher cap rates. But we did the Crossroads deal in Roseville, and then we did a grocery anchored deal up in Elk River, and those were $30 million and $20 million, and those both have debt. And yeah, I mean, if you can get debt to pencil, if it's and some buyers are of the mindset right now that rates are coming down. It's inevitable. And so they're willing to take less of a return today just so they can get control of the deals, because there's this big thought that rent growth is going to go. It's almost like apartments and industrial, and everybody was paying crazy cap rates for that stuff. It was all based on rent growth. So everybody thinks rents are going to grow in retail, so they're willing to take a lower return today, even if they need to put debt on it, and then they'll refi it out in 2 years, and hopefully rents go up. So it works, but it's less common.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, interesting strategy too, right? So just there's always opportunity in every market. It's just how to figure it out.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we have a lot of listings, and they just it's just tough. What are the IPX numbers?
Oh yeah.
This is stat. This is
Interesting
fascinating.
stat from, just like looking at like the buyer pool and talking about exchange buyers out there. The through JLL, we were tracking. Somebody was tracking the amount of funds sitting at an intermediary, like a national 1031
Oh,
intermediary.
really? Yeah, that makes sense.
Good kind of litmus test for where the market's at. And
Absolutely.
how much money are you sitting on? Well, the numbers we heard were in April of 22, which was like April or May of 22 was like the peak. And I think they were sitting on $10.5 billion of intermediary funds.
Wow.
And in the fall of 23, they were sitting on $4 to $4.5 billion.
Wow.
And the caveat there, the asterisk on that was, and we're finding that of the $4.5 billion or $4 billion, half the people are just paying the gains.
Interesting.
So like,
There's
whereas
just nothing out there.
in early 22, everybody was like, intermediary funds would come in, you execute the exchange, and they're gone. Well, it means the 1031 market is down 70%, roughly.
Wow.
And you can see that in all the net lease inventory that we're working on. You can see it in the offers, where you just have, like I said, you see less 1031 buyers actually putting the offers in. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, there's opportunity in that as well, maybe. So,
Totally.
yeah. Well, you guys, I really appreciate your taking the time to kind of make us smarter.
I don't know if we did that.
Hopefully a little bit.
I feel a little smarter. I'm sure everybody feels a little smarter. It's just really, you've got to really, it's just really impressive to talk to people that are really focused on something and know it so well. And so for you to know the retail capital markets so well and share that information with us, it's fun. And it's fun to hang with you guys as
Yeah,
well.
appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
I hope
you.
I'm not here 18 years from now to do it again.
Well, you might be
Maybe
here.
it'll be the ownership
We'll
side.
we'll be talking about something totally different then, for sure.
So good.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.